All right, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Fantastic, then I call the meeting to order.
Yes.
Tom, I'm supposed to welcome you back to the committee. I don't know why you signed up for this again, probably for the same reason I did. Somebody blackmailed us. Lou, I want to thank you for your past service. I'm supposed to be nice because apparently you could hurt me, I guess, according to Greg. Is there any public comment?
No public comment.
All right. All right, then I'm going to take action item number 1. And my understanding is that this is the one that's going to be the problem because you guys are going to suck up all my time giving me a presentation. But go ahead, Greg.
Hey,
Sorry, I guess it's Johnny and Rebecca.
thank you, Thanasi. Thank you, board members. Good morning. So normally you see me as general counsel, but today I get to wear my other hat, which is the chief compliance officer. And in that role, my primary responsibility is to report violations of ethics, fraud, and tax compliance issues. But today I get to do something very positive, which is show you how staff, with the assistance of Rebecca Walker, is implementing best practices. So if you recall, earlier last year, you asked me to make sure that staff was implementing SDCERS best practices for compliance. To do that, we retained attorney Rebecca Walker of the law firm Kaplan & Walker. Rebecca is a well-respected expert in compliance. She helps Fortune 500 companies form and review and amend, change their compliance programs, as well as other retirement systems like SDCERS. So the scope of her project with us was to take a look at SDCERS' compliance program and say, what are we missing? How can we implement best practices? And her recommendations have been excellent. And so today you'll see, I think, the heart of her recommendation, which is the proposed ethics and compliance charter, which staff is recommending that you adopt today and then through the board tomorrow. And throughout this fiscal year, you'll see me present on additional best practice recommendations. So for the next 10, 15 minutes, committee members, I'd like Rebecca to go ahead and talk to you about what a compliance program should be according to the Department of Justice guidelines and how this charter helps us fulfill those guidelines and the purpose of a compliance program.
And Rebecca, take all 7 minutes that's allotted to you. Go ahead.
Rebecca, thank you for joining us from Santa Monica. If you go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you, Johnny. I will just say that the audit committee was also very excited to hear from me yesterday and asked me to do at least 14 minutes. So just throwing that out there. I'm delighted to be here this morning. Thank you, Johnny, for your kind introduction. I will keep it short and exciting for you guys, but always happy to talk about compliance programs. I've been doing this for 20-odd years, and it's always a pleasure to meet a new organization. I've also worked with several other pension funds, so I'm always happy to be working in this space. So we wanted to start, if we could go to the next slide, please. Just talking very briefly about the importance of a robust compliance program. Obviously, every organization has legal and compliance risks. Misconduct occurs at every organization. And the purpose of a compliance program is really to attempt to decrease the risk of misconduct at an organization and increase the chance that when misconduct occurs, it will be reported and the organization can respond appropriately. The government has long offered organizations with incentives to implement compliance programs, wants organizations to try to prevent misconduct by employees. Those incentives typically take the form of either a promise to consider compliance programs when making a charging or enforcement decision, or to consider compliance programs when deciding what a penalty for misconduct should be. And the government has also provided organizations with a lot of guidance on what an effective compliance program looks like, how to structure a compliance program. That is the guidance that SDCERS looked at in structuring its compliance program and that most organizations look at and utilize. I think it's also worth mentioning, just for 30 seconds, that robust compliance programs have also been shown over the course of many years through social science to actually decrease the level of misconduct at organizations. So not only are they helpful in interacting with, in dealing with stakeholders if misconduct does in fact occur at an organization, but more importantly, they actually decrease the risk of misconduct, of violations occurring, and they increase the chance that when violations do occur, employees will report that to the organization. If we go to the next slide, please. This is a bit of a busy slide, and I wanted to show you in one page what a compliance program consists of. It's all of these elements. I promise we're not going to go over each of them in detail, but I just wanted to show you sort of all the different parts of a compliance program. It's a big system of efforts to decrease the risk of misconduct through training and alerting employees and others to what the requirements are, to detect misconduct when it occurs through a variety of means, and then to respond to it. And SDCERS has all of these elements. It's considered all of these pieces in putting its compliance program together. If we could go on to the next slide, please. For the remainder of our few short minutes together, I wanted to go over a few of the elements of a compliance program, not all of them, but some of the key ones, just to show you all what the standards are and how SDCERS has structured its program and drafted its program charter to satisfy the standards that are relevant to that particular program element. And the standards, again, come from primarily the federal government and the U.S. Sentencing Commission, the Department of Justice, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Lots of different agencies at the federal level have provided organizations with standards and guidance regarding what a compliance program should look like. So in the area of board oversight, which is the most important thing for you guys, the standards are very clear. They've been developed over a number of years. So basically what they ask of you is that you be knowledgeable about the compliance program, which this is assisting you with being, that you exercise oversight of the compliance program, and that the Chief Compliance Officer have the ability to go to you immediately with more serious issues when they arise, God forbid, and that he be able to report to you periodically about what the compliance program looks like. Just that you understand what the program is and that you be accessible if there are serious issues that the organization is dealing with. At SDCERS, the Chief Compliance Officer is able to report to you. You're getting an update on the compliance system. So this is all part of that program oversight. And the program charter very clearly gives you all the responsibility for overseeing the program and gives Johnny the ability to report issues to you when they arise. So you're in good shape from that perspective. If we could go to the next slide, please. I also wanted to talk with you about the structure of a compliance program, which sort of relates to where the compliance officer sits within the organization and the level of responsibility and authority of that function. The legal standards here really stress independence of the compliance function so that the function is able to investigate misconduct, for example, require training, those kinds of things. Also stresses the importance of resources for the function, reach of the function throughout the organization, and authority. The Department of Justice actually issued revised guidance on compliance programs just last month. It doesn't happen very often, so we get very excited when we get renewed revised guidance from the DOJ. And that guidance really stressed the importance of independence, resources, and reach of a program. So all really important characteristics. At SDCERS, the Chief Compliance Officer reports directly to the CEO, which is a best practice, has access to the board, which is a best practice. And the charter, I think, does a really nice job of clearly articulating the independence of the function by providing the Chief Compliance Officer functions as an independent and objective party with unrestricted access to SDCERS functions, records, property, and personnel in order to fulfill the responsibilities of the position. That's not something that I always see, and it's really a very good practice. So I think that the charter has articulated the program independence and authority very nicely. If we could go to the next slide, please. Legal guidance also stresses the importance of high-level support, management support of, and management involvement in a compliance program. At SDCERS, management is very clearly charged with integrating the program into the culture of their divisions, which is not something I always see, and I think it's a really nice way to put it. It creates the onus on management to make sure that they're creating the right culture of compliance within their groups. Management is also tasked with specific program responsibilities, which helps ensure the integration of the program into sort of the day-to-day activities of the organization. And a lot of organizations, the program sort of sits on the side and it feels somewhat siloed from the business. Here, I think SDCERS has done a really nice job of ensuring that the right folks in management have the responsibilities for compliance program design and implementation in a way that helps integrate program activities into management of the organization, which is rare and an excellent practice. And management also is responsible for preparing their division compliance program reports, which get aggregated and presented to you all, which again is just another way of integrating them into the program, which is excellent. If we could go to the next slide, please. In the area of reporting and investigations, legal guidance provides that really focuses on providing employees with avenues to report suspected misconduct and non-retaliation, and also the availability of confidentiality and anonymity in reporting. At SDCERS, employees are provided with several avenues to report potential misconduct. Johnny has developed intake and investigation procedures, which call for consistent and fair and confidential investigations, which is a good practice. And there's a strict non-retaliation policy, which is discussed in the program charter and is a really important part of any compliance program. So the charter has done a nice job with that. On the next slide, please. In the area of responding to substantiated allegations of misconduct, so when a violation has occurred, the legal standards here really focus on, well, they focus on sort of consistency and fairness and discipline, but they really highlight the importance of using violations of a compliance program, using misconduct when it occurs to improve the compliance effort. So if a violation occurs, has the organization sought to understand why and remediate any gaps in controls that allowed misconduct to happen. And here again, SDCERS, I think, has done a nice job of providing for the, actually putting the responsibility on the Chief Compliance Officer to ensure that remediation is considered. Next slide, please. In the area of culture of compliance, here, I think government guidance has really sort of lagged behind what organizations and compliance professionals have long known, which is that the culture of an organization is really more important than the policies and the rules at decreasing the level of misconduct at an organization. But the federal government has sort of caught on to that in recent years and really has focused its recent guidance on the importance of fostering a culture of ethics and compliance. SDCERS has also recognized the importance of a culture of ethics and compliance through discussion and communication of core values, messaging from senior leadership, and sort of really a sincere recognition by senior leaders of the importance of compliance and business ethics. And as Johnny said, when he introduced me, this effort, this more recent effort, really came from the board. So a recognition at the board level of the importance of strong compliance efforts and of a strong tone at the top, which is excellent. Next slide, please. On this slide, which is my very last slide, really, it has not been that painful. I'm just going to refuse to believe that. This is exciting stuff. This is just a sort of stew of all the other elements of the program that we didn't specifically focus on, but we wanted to make sure that we let you guys know that SDCERS has considered all of the elements of a program. The program charter discusses each of the recognized elements of a compliance program, has tried to structure those in light of the organization's risk and risk profile, and I think it's done a really nice job of putting it all together, and also revising the Chief Compliance Officer Charter, which is a sort of, sister document to ensure that it's consistent with the program charter. So I think that the organization has done a really nice job, and thank you to the board for being active in recognizing the value of a strong compliance program to the organization.
All right. Rebecca, thank you very, very much. Johnny, thank you very, very much. Your time is way up. So unless there are any questions or comments from the members of the committee, I will entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation to adopt the Ethics Compliance Program Charter and amend the Chief Compliance Officer's Charter.
Benassi, I made a promise to Ed Katroza to share his comment with this committee. Can I share that, please?
And only because I like Ed. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, as Rebecca said, we presented this charter to the Audit Committee. It was well received. Ed Katroza did want to point out and make sure that the compliance program is run with the understanding the importance of the independence of the board and the board makeup. So I believe that the charter does that, and that no changes are needed to enforce that comment. Thank you, Benassi.
Thank you. I see no, so I have a raised hand for, oh, Johnny, that was you. Okay. I see no other raised hands in the queue. Do I have a motion to approve?
I need a first and a second.
So moved.
Thank you, Bobby.
Almost, was that you?
Yes, second.
All right.
Okay, we are ready to vote.
Cynthia, would it be easier for us to just raise our hands to vote as a group?
I'll roll call. So, Mr. Provolos. Benassi.
Aye.
Mr. Hallquist.
Aye.
Ms. Boone.
Yes.
Mr. Udries.
Aye.
Mr. Battaglia.
Yes.
All votes are in, and the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, next is staff's recommendation to amend the educational policy, ethical conduct compliance, training policy, information technology policy. Thankfully, Greg has spared me mandatory comments, but does anybody on the committee have any questions of Johnny on this? Hearing and seeing no hands raised, do I have a motion to approve the staff's recommendation to amend the educational policy, ethical conduct, compliance, and training policy, and information technology policy?
This is Charlie. I make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
Tom will second.
Tom, thank you very much.
And we are ready to vote. Mr. Provolos.
Aye.
Mr. Hallquist.
Aye.
Ms. Boone.
Yes.
Mr. Udries.
Aye.
Mr. Battaglia.
Yes.
All votes are in, and the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3, staff's recommendation to amend the board meeting policy, committees charter, audit committee charter, board process on selection of independent non-board members of the audit committee, and board process for review of internal auditor. Are there any questions from committee members of Johnny? Seeing no raised hands and hearing none, I ask for a motion to approve the staff's recommendation to amend.
So moved.
Thank you, Bobby. Second.
Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Cynthia, aye from me.
Okay. Mr. Hallquist.
Aye.
Ms. Boone.
Aye.
Mr. Udries.
Aye.
Mr. Battaglia.
Yes.
All votes are in, and the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, everybody. Going to number 4, staff's recommendation to approve a contract with Dell Technologies to increase data storage capacity. That seems to be a big hot topic. There's probably going to be a lot of discussion about this. Does anybody have any questions of David Bond on this issue? Seeing no raised hands, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve this horrible contract with Dell for an exorbitant fee?
So moved.
Thank you, Bobby. Can I get a second?
Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Cynthia, aye for me.
Okay. Mr. Hallquist.
Aye.
Ms. Boone.
Aye.
Mr. Udries.
Aye.
Mr. Battaglia.
Aye.
All votes are in, and the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Moving on to information items. There's only one item, compliance with board policies report. Johnny Tran. Haven't you talked enough today, Johnny?
Almost. I just
Okay.
want 30 seconds, Benassi.
Oh, I'm trying to.
This is a new report, so I wanted to comment on why it's before you. So last year, the board asked to help you understand and oversee what the staff is doing to comply with board policies. So normally staff tells you what we're doing in their individual division reports. What this policy does is it helps put everything together, something I want to do every year for you. It gives you what we're doing to comply with your policies and then written assurance that we are doing that.
Actually, in all seriousness, I actually thought the report was helpful and well done, and I like the fact that it was broken down by all the departments, but most importantly, I like the fact that all of the department heads signed them under penalty of perjury and penalty of death, I believe, so thank you. So,
Thank you, and thank you for the rest of the management team for putting that together for us.
all right, any questions by the committee of Johnny? Hearing none, seeing no raised hands, let's go move on to reports. Item number 1, Member Services Division report. Cynthia, thank you for being available and for presenting your report quickly and concisely.
Thank you. Please confirm that my audio is being heard.
We can hear
Yes.
you.
Thank you very much. It's been the worst of times and the best of times. This pandemic hit during our busiest time, always leading up to the end of the fiscal year, and we met this challenge with teamwork and perseverance to find a new way to do things. I want to start at the front, which is with our members, and suddenly they couldn't call us to ask us questions or come in and meet with us. And I've personally spoken to hundreds of them over the past couple of months, and it was frightening for them. We had people who were making big life decisions and were having decisions made for them, and we needed to serve them. So some of their concerns were, how will I sign my paperwork? How will you receive the documents I'm turning in? Is anyone there? How can you help me? And so we calmly explained to everyone that we are here, and we, with our limited staff in the office, it really, so much of it came down to our call center. We were down one person when this started, and the call center soon found themselves doing twice the usual amount of work because they were the ones in the office transferring documents around to everyone. It was during open enrollment. The call volume was very high as usual, and I just want to thank them so much for their hard work. We have Selene, Farnaz, Claudia, Sarema, and Raven. And in the last 2 days of health open enrollment, they received 360 calls in the last 2 days, which is enormous. And Claudia, Sarema, and Raven did receive Employee of the Quarter awards for their excellent work. A huge savior in managing this volume was our member seminars, which were done in person, of course, but then that stopped. So as you read in my report, in one weekend, Jessica Maloney turned that around and has been giving webinars almost nonstop. These have been hugely important to our members and a great comfort in that they can get their information remotely. Counseling, very busy this time of year, and when this pandemic started, we had 2 counselors who were in training. The next week, they were on their own doing phone counseling, and they absolutely rose to the challenge. And this happened when we have a number of people who are leaving or trying to enter drop before the end of the fiscal year, and this year there was a record number of drop entries. I just want to thank our entire team and our leadership. Marcel and Greg have been wonderful through this. The whole team has been awesome in just really serving our members who have told me that they do need us and appreciate us. And we just keep finding new ways of doing things. And I believe our next report will be Marcel, and she will explain to you how all that work magically happens in the background. That's the end of my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help.
Fantastic. Cynthia, I actually have a comment or a mission to this question. First of all, I think you guys did a great job stepping in and solving things and kind of plugging the gap. I have a question, and it's not meant to be accusatory in any way, shape, or form, and it may not be, you may not be the right person to answer it, but it would seem to me that being able to take calls when the system goes down is kind of a primary function for us. How did we not have a contingency plan for that? Because we were offline for, if I'm not mistaken, about a month and a half from calls, and we were doing it online versus video chat. But a lot of our retirees, a lot of them don't necessarily have the technology to communicate with us that way. People are getting better at it. But I was trying to figure out, with all the reporting we do, with all the internal audit stuff that we do, with all the things with all the redundancy systems we did and tested, how did we miss that? And what is management doing about that on a going forward basis?
I appreciate it, and I can answer that question, and if anyone else would like to join in. First of all, what we have been doing since the beginning is working towards a remote call center solution. We're actually just finishing up the testing of that and getting ready to start our training hopefully very soon, because we do want our call center to be able to be working from home again, and we know that this could get worse again. I would say that I was impressed to see anyone who did have their remote call centers set up. There were some people who had more success than others. With us, our system had been working very well with the thought that someone was always in the office. So what I want to share is that it wasn't that people had to video chat with us, but those who were able to send emails, which is the vast majority of people, they were able to send us an email through a widely promoted contact us feature that we have, and then we were calling them back. So we were talking to people on the phone after the first few days. It was just hard for them to call in. So I do appreciate that, and I have devoted my pandemic life to finding the remote call center solution. We're working with IT. We've got a great team of consultants who also work with the city. Other places at the city had to implement the same thing. And so we are actually the second group of the entire city who is implementing this remote call center. This is the key to the future, and we will get there very soon. So I do appreciate that question. Not sure if that answers it all the way, or if Greg or Marcel would like to add anything else.
Well, I think that answered a good portion of it. I think the question I still have, and maybe Greg or Marcel can focus on it, is how did we miss that concept with all the, I mean, we spend a lot of time in compliance and audit. We review these systems. We have redundancy systems. How did we miss the concept of this one? And the reason I'm asking the question, again, this is not accusatory, but I think when we figure out what we do wrong or how we miss something that today in hindsight was a big deal, it helps us get better as an organization. So I don't know, Greg, Marcel, does anybody have some thoughts? And if I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize. We can do it later.
I'll definitely jump in on that. I think just the bottom line, that was a blind spot for us. I don't think this is considered a best practice amongst public California pension systems. I've been in the industry a long time, and I only know of one other system that had a remote call center already established because they had already previously gone through a disaster and learned that best practice. So I know that there's a handful of public pension systems that force their employees back into the office, what I consider prematurely, to open up their call centers. And I know there's a handful now that are actually implementing remote call centers, which I think is a more prudent course of action. So just basically, it was a blind spot, and that's why we do disaster recoveries. That's why you learn from your experiences. So that's kind of the long and the short of it.
So thank you for that. I think that's excellent, Greg. I guess the other question I have is do we have a plan, or is there anything we can do to take a pause and start looking for other blind spots? And how is management looking to do that?
Yes. You know, as we go through and look at business continuity, that is more blind spots. In my previous work with business resumption, it's a common best practice to actually have remote work areas where you can actually rent space. But even that is a blind spot, as the rentable space now, you would cram a bunch of people into one room. Well, with this experience, that becomes a new blind spot. So yes, we are taking a step back and looking at our business resumption and how we do operations and how to fix things. We are taking remediative efforts. One thing that I'm looking at is making sure we have enough technological equipment to help people work remotely that may not be able to in future disasters.
Thanks. Greg, thank you. What I would love to see for our next meeting would be whatever the sort of a plan by management to kind of, number one, identify and look for blind spots, and maybe that's the plan to do that on a routine basis. And then number two, especially if you're looking at a technological fix, what is the budget impact going to be over the next, either this calendar year or next fiscal year, where we're talking about whatever it is we have to do to keep working remotely from home or from a remote center. The reason I say that is because I don't doubt that management's looking at it. I just want to, as a board member, I'd like to understand what's the plan for how to look at it. What are we looking at, and what is the cost going to be so that we kind of eliminate and reduce the number of blind spots? There's going to be blind spots. There's no two ways about it. Right. The question is, what is management's plan? What's the system? We did a great job with compliance and reviewing our compliance plan. That's great. What's But what I'm asking for is sort of that same look at our blind spots industry-wide, organization-wise, for serving our members.
Will do.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I didn't mean to monopolize that time. Anybody else on the committee?
No.
Okay, hearing none, let's go to Marcel's report on Benefits Administration Division report.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to add a little bit to the conversation we just had. I think that, Tanasi, it's a great point that one of our blind spots has been in serving our members. Our focus when we're talking about disaster recovery has been how do we get our systems up? How do we make sure we get payroll done? Those things. So what we did find through this is several things. One, we were able to have webinars for our member seminars, and that has been very successful, and that's something that I think we will continue. And when staff is back in the office and things are somewhat more normal, our plans right now are just to have a combination of live seminars and continue to offer webinars because we've had such a good response to that. We also were able to go to completely call center or completely phone appointments for our members. So we were able to make sure that we still met our goal of meeting with every single one of our members before they actually enter drop, exit drop, or service retire, so they can get all of that information that they need for that. So those are a couple of the areas that we're looking at. And then as Cynthia said, we're looking at our third, which is the remote call center. And that's something that the city has had to implement, and we are piggybacking on what they did. It's been one of our challenges to make sure that we can still have the level of service that we want and make sure we still are able to record our calls and document them in the system. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more context, but that also flows right into what I wanted to highlight in my report. You may have noticed this is one of the longest reports you've received from me because there is so much going on right now that is not our day-to-day operations. And most of that has nothing to do with COVID. It just is the timing that it's a really busy time for us. We normally average about 57 people who are either entering drop, exiting drop, or service retiring every month. In June, we had 216. It's a 375% increase. So that meant that the Ben admin staff had to prepare estimates, the counselors had to review those estimates and prepare for the meetings, and then actually conduct those phone meetings. It was a lot more work on our call center, and specifically Cynthia, I know, made a lot of those calls herself to let our staff know that, or let our members know that their appointment was still going to happen, but that it was going to happen over the phone. So very proud of the staff that we were able to handle, as I said, a 375% increase in 1 month of people either entering drop, exiting drop, or service retiring during a time period when we have most of our staff working remotely. So that was what I wanted to highlight. The numbers are a little bit higher than what I put in my report. After we prepared our reports, we did have some more drop entries and some more drop exits that came through. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on that or anything else in my report.
So, Marcel, I guess I have one question. Is the number of retirements or drops, people exiting drop, is that something that's going to affect our overall numbers, or is that an anticipated spike?
It's a one-time spike, so I don't think it's going to affect our overall numbers. We're already seeing that July has gone back to more normal numbers. A lot of it is because the city had been on a pay freeze for technically 10 years. It was actually more like 12 years, and then raises started coming in, and so employees waited to see those raises impact their final average salary before they decided to enter drop or service retire. So we saw a lot of delaying of that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions by committee members? Hearing none, thank you very much, Marcel. Appreciate it. Moving on to Information Technology Division report. Any questions by committee members? Hearing none, let's move on to Legal Compliance Division report. Johnny, do you have any changes or comments from your report that we've dutifully read?
I don't.
Okay, any questions by anybody on the committee? Hearing none, let's move to the Finance Division report. My buddy Ted, how are you doing? He's not even on my call. Didn't even show up to my meeting. All right. Anybody on the committee have any questions for Dave, who's not going to be here to answer? For Ted, who's not going to be here to answer them anyway? All right, hearing none. Same thing with financial statements. Any questions from anybody on the committee? Hearing none. Budget reports. Any questions from anybody on the committee? Hearing none. Members owing in excess of $10,000 report. Any questions from anybody on the committee? Thank you. Hearing none. Overpayments and underpayments in excess of $1,000 annual report. Any questions by anybody on the committee? Fantastic. Hearing none, I'm going to move to questions and comments from the chair, board members, and staff. Is there anybody who has any comments or questions? It'd be helpful if you raised your hand, but shout out if you need to say so. All right. Hearing none, I do not believe there's a closed session, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
So moved.
Thank you, Bobby. Second?
Charlie.
Fantastic. Goodbye, everybody. See you in 2 months.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.